Get out. Problem. Worship. God, so much worship team. And today, topics that we're going to be speaking on is the 144,000. There's one, right? Mark it down. Let's pray. Father, before we go into battery reasons.
Have for us and the word that you're giving to us to study, to learn more about you, to learn more how to draw near to you and love you, how you want to be loved. Father, let me. It's not on. Yeah, I don't have it on. Yeah. Father, we just thank you for this day. No, we're good. Okay. We just thank you for the day and just thank you for loving us, choosing to love us, in spite of the fact that sometimes, if not a lot of times, we're not very lovable. Let this worship service continue on in a beautiful expression of love to you, Lord. In your name, amen. We've been working on the book of Revelation. Last week we started chapter 7, which we introduced as a Shamash chapter. There's always one of these that precede these chapters that are menorah chapters, where there's 7 events being given to John to express what the end time events are going to look like. And so before each one of these sets of 7 events, there's a little section of text. They usually take up about a chapter, and we call them introductory or Shamash chapters, named after the center Shamash. And the reason I think why the construction of this book is like this is because the Shamash chapters tell one story, and the many menorah chapters tell another story, one of blessing, one of curses. It's the fulfillment of the Torahic concept that if you obey me and follow me and trust in me and rely on me, i.e. love me, I'll bless you, I'll reward you, and ultimately I'll offer you immortality. However, on the other hand, if you choose not to believe in me, trust in me, and rely on me, then there's a different destiny. And it doesn't have anything to do with being immortal. So we see these 2 stories unfolding in these 2 sets. You could literally read the Shamash chapters, and it would be a beautiful story in and of itself. You could just read the mini menorah chapters, and they would tell a story without any breaks at all. The difference is when you read them both together, you can see what's going on simultaneously in heaven and on earth. One, to prepare the bride and to prepare for this wedding feast that occurs at the end. Another story that's occurring simultaneously as these events are unfolding, events that God is trying to get these people that have chosen not to pursue him to choose him. And it's his last go around to get their attention before, there's always a day of judgment. That's in everybody's life, in every community, in every national, and in this case, in the planet's life. There's a day when God says, okay, This is the day that I've chosen. It's kind of like a feast. It's a memorial. There will come a day when God will say, that's it. Everybody has been given chances, and they've either hardened. There will be nobody left standing on the, I'm not going to stand on this, on the edge, wavering. Everybody, I believe, at the end will either have the mark by choice or won't have the mark by choice and suffer for it at the hands of the enemy, or be blessed for it at the hands of God. We'll see that in the ensuing chapters, how Satan is going to hate you for not, but God will love you for not choosing this mark that is a symbol of the ultimate, and we'll get into what 6666 means. It's in chapter 13, so it's a ways away. But this this symbol of 3 6s in a row is a symbol of you can be like God. And we'll see how that plays it, which is what is that? That's the original lie, isn't it? So it's 666 is just a blossoming, it's a black rose, but it's a blossoming of this evil concept that Satan created from the beginning. Anyway, so we are in the midst of this Shamash chapter, introductory chapter to one of the most important set of sevens, the 7 trumpets. And boy, do they bring some excitement to if we haven't seen any yet, the trumpets bring it on. But before we get to chapter 8 and 9, where the trumpets are expounded on, we have this little chapter inserted right in between the 6th seal and the 7th seal. The 7th seal is, in fact, the 7 trumpets. Okay? If you want to know what happens in the 7th seal, we've already done the seals. The 7th trumpet events they describe the 7th seal. So when we get to chapter 8, what does it say? And the 7th angel tore off the 7th seal off of this scroll, and 7 angels with the 7 last trump, da, 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 da. And that's what happens, right? But inserted between 6 and 7 seals, we have this chapter. And last week we got introduced to 4 angels that are standing on the edge or the corners or the wings or the boundaries of the earth. Okay? We expounded on some of that detail. We'll go into it today. And these angels are doing something very interesting, in my opinion, because I'm an amateur meteorologist, and I love this, which is the study of weather. And these angels are holding back the wind. And I remember as a boy, I've always been interested in the book of Revelation and weather. And I remember reading this when I was young and going, holding back the wind, that isn't any good. Because the wind makes it rain. The wind is an effort by natural phenomena to distribute heat. So if it's really hot over here and really cold over here, what's going to happen? It's going to try, the heat and the cold are going to try to mix, right? Because hot air is lighter than cold, heavy air. So the cold, heavy air, like water, will flow underneath oil, like hot air, right? And it attempts to move, and in the moving thereof, we perceive it as wind. We think to say the wind is blowing outside is a complete misunderstanding of wind is not blown, it's sucked, right? There's a sucking between pressure systems and cold and hot zones. And anyway, so I'm sitting there going, the angels are going to hold back the wind. And so I started to investigate this biblically, anciently. And it became obvious that this was an ancient description of holding back the wind was basically an expression of a curse. Because if you hold back the wind, there's no inclement weather, and we need inclement. How many of us are stronger how many of us think we're stronger if we live a uneventful, peaceful, blessed, we're millionaires the whole time of our life? How many would like that? Yeah. But we would be shriveled up, good for nothing, not stalwart in anything. We would be flimsy flamsy, wouldn't we? It's struggle in life that makes us strong. If there's no struggle, we atrophy. How many have had injuries where they couldn't move their arm for 3 or 4 or 5 months, or couldn't, how many come out stronger physically, muscularly? Yeah, you atrophy your muscle. So is the introduction of trouble into our life. It brings strength in the end. And this lack of wind is a curse. So these angels, obviously, these are angelic beings sent by God to earth the text is not implying that there's not going to be any wind. The book of Revelation is a giant metaphor, okay? It uses these ancient Old Testament metaphors throughout to bring out principles, okay? These metaphors represent principles like curses. God is holding back the wind, not because there's not going to be any wind. He's holding them back because it's kind of like whenever I've studied this word curse in the Bible, it says in Deuteronomy that he's going to send curses if you don't obey me. Well, a better, we think like witchcraft curses. That is not what it's talking about. How God curses is the best picture of it is in the word chai. How many know what that word means in Hebrew? Life. Very good. And it's spelled het, my mouth's too dry, het yud. And the pictography is 2 hands basically building a fence. So everywhere you go in the universe, whether it's a galaxy or our solar system or the earth or the cells in our body or our body and the cells in our body, and you can go smaller and smaller and smaller. What do you find everywhere? You find walls. And those walls are walls of protection that allow life to exist. Guess what? If you had no skin, what would happen? You would be a feeding ground for bacteria. I remember when I was in college, the professor said, okay, I want everybody to put a Petri dish. You know what a Petri dish is? It's a little dish that you have a little cover over. It's clear usually. And in the bottom, there's a matrix of a sugary, jello-y type substance, right? And so if you want to grow bacteria, you put bacteria in it, and the next day you come back and the thing's like explode. It's a huge, giant city of bacteria growing wherever you planted 1 or 2 bacteria the day before. So he said, open it up and put it on the counter on the lab for an hour, and then put the cup on or the top on, and the next day we'll come back, see if you caught anything. Sure enough, the thing's littered with bacteria. That's why, if you have open food out on the kitchen counter, don't just let it sit there. It's much better like put something over it, because within a few minutes, bacteria, you're breathing in and out all day long. God has built us walls to protect us from degradation everywhere, right? So in the solar system, there's a wall created by magnetism and radiation from the sun. The earth has a wall. What's the earth's wall of protection? Very good. The magnetic core of the earth, plus a really important one, very good, the atmosphere, right? Those things, without either one of those, we're dead almost immediately, right? And of course, the cell wall, everywhere you see walls. I could name off 20 of them. Some of them are real technical, some of them are easy to understand. But God, and all of them, if any of them were missing, the work of building walls, het, yud, life wouldn't exist. So what God, by building walls, what he's preventing from coming through the wall is chaos, disorder. Scientists call that entropy. Everything is degrading, going to a cold, unordered state. That's the definition of entropy. Einstein discovered this or built onto this concept 100 years ago or so. Everywhere, God has built walls to protect us and prevent degradation. That's why we can live longer than a couple of seconds, because God has built walls everywhere. What I've noticed is when God is going to allow chaos into our life or trouble into our life, he removes a wall. Scientifically, there's spiritual walls too. All right, God used to have a wall, a dome over America because it was holy. I remember this, it was probably 100 years ago. This group of Satanists invited some African witch doctors to come over to the United States and curse the United States. And when they got over here, they couldn't curse it. Because he says there's an authority here that's way more powerful than us. And we can't, to use our language, penetrate the wall. How do we bring on walls tumbling down or being penetrated in our own life? How do we do that?
Disobedience.
You guys are so good. When we disobey God, God goes, okay, I'm going to put just a little, if he would tear the wall down, we'd be dead. But he just opens a little crack. And allows a little bit of chaos to come in. And when he brings judgment on an area, he'll, like for example, Jupiter is a wonderful planet, right? But it acts as a wall. It sucks up all the meteorites and asteroids that would normally hit the Earth by its gravitational pull. All he's got to do is just move a little planet a little bit further away or make some modification, and stuff starts to get through. We control that nationally, community, and personally by keeping our eyes on him, being obedient to God. I'm not saying being perfect. I'm saying sin not. Now, what's sin? It should read, rebel not. Rebelling is the idea of, God, I know you have a way, I got my own way and I like it better. And you know what, I'm going to change the rules so I stop feeling bad and having a guilty conscience, so I'm good with my own ways. Your ways, I don't like. That's rebelling. So if you're having a bad hair day and you make some mistakes, you get up, dust yourself off, and repent and move on. That's not sin. That's making some mistakes that you need repentance for, but then going about God's way the rest of the day. God's applauding that. Okay? He's not going, oh, gee, when are we going to figure this out? He's going, you're figuring it out. Now all we have to do is just figure out so you don't do it tomorrow. And he'll help you with that. So, none of that was in my notes. So, I don't know. So these four angels are standing on the four corners of the earth, holding back the wind, basically tearing down a wall. Okay, they're in the process of removing a layer of protect. How many in your own lives have seen walls of protection where you're going, I should have been dead, or maybe not that severe. How come I got through that? And everybody else, had a problem with it. Whatever the it is. I've seen that multiple times. In fact, in regards to walls, I haven't told this story in a long time. There was once when I was in college, I grew up my mom and dad were very strong Christians. And so I knew better, but didn't live it for a short period of time. So I went off to college. I was a regular going to church. And in fact, after I got my driver's license when I was 15, I said, hey, Mom, I'm going to go to my own church. I like this one better. And you can stay going to yours, but this is more like my speed. And she was going, well, as long as you're going to church and it's not, something that wasn't Christian, she didn't have a problem with it, nor did my dad. Anyway, I had a great relationship with my folks, wonderful people. My mom and I were like best friends. And anyway, so I went up to college. And so this was my first major sortie out of the house, and went up to Humboldt. We grew up in Tustin, Orange County, and went up to Humboldt, and new excitement, there's fishing. It's like I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven when I'm out in the woods, okay? I'm close to God. I feel his presence. And so I'm out there enjoying life, got my fishing pole. I love to fish. You'd never know it by how many times I fish anymore. But in those days, I fished every time I had 5 minutes. And there's tons of rivers that are full of steelhead and salmon up there, or used to be. And so anyway, I moved up there and started taking all these classes. And on Sunday, I got into the habit of going fishing. I wasn't Messianic. In fact, there wasn't any Messianic church that I knew of. So Sunday was the go-to-meeting day. And so I remember I was walking down. It was beautiful. It was I forget the name of the river, but it was the river that flows west out of the Shasta Lake area. And, there's a little town just before you get to this place. And at the entrance is a big giant statue of Bigfoot. Okay, that's how out in the middle of nowhere this place is. So anyway, we're walking down this really precarious trail down, because the river's down into a canyon. And I'm walking down, and I have my hand on the side of the cliff, trying to stay on this little ledge so we can get down to the shore of the river down below. And I slip. And the rock right here on the face of the cliff is that shale platelet kind of stuff. And so my hand slips. And I'd like to expose something to you here, but I have my suicide scar. It's not suicide, because suicide's like this, right? Mine's like this. So either I didn't know what I was doing, or it wasn't suicide. So I have this, and it's healed up, but it's a great reminder. It's kind of like Saul's reminder. He prayed that, he had some problem, but he finally concluded that, God wanted it there for a reason. God doesn't answer every prayer in the affirmative. He always answers. He just doesn't go, yeah, I'll go with that. And this is my reminder of what God was trying to teach me in this little time in my life. And that is, John, I will continue to allow walls to come down and bring chaos into your life if you persist in this behavior. Not fishing. It's just, it's like the internet. It's the TV. None of those are evil. It's just when and how you use them, right? So fishing is wonderful, but not on Sunday. And so I remember it ruined the trip. I mean, it was bleeding like, it was a lot of blood. And I mean, it didn't cut the artery right here. But all my friends looked at it and go, we are going back to, what's the name of the Arcata, which is the town Humboldt State's in. So we rush back. It's like an hour and a half drive, okay? We rush back and they sew this thing all up, and I've got blood everywhere. And the whole time I'm sitting there going, okay, I got it. God, I'm talking to God. And so that did not occur again. I mean, I'm not saying I never went fishing on Sunday again. It's just I changed my behavior to conform to his plan for my life, okay? And anyway, but I still have the evidence to prove that which you don't need any evidence that I'm human, but occasionally I look at that and it's a reminder that, yep, John, I need to be Yeshurun. It's the biblical word God uses to describe his people, and it means the straight ones. Even though we're not straight, God still honors us with calling us straight ones. And it's straight there means moral ones. So you probably have a reminder too, some memory where God's going, hey, Joe, I need you to be straight today. Get yourself lined up with my ways, my will, and my word. Otherwise, the walls I'm going to take a wall down. Here, what we see in the book of Revelation, chapter 7, God is peeling away walls of protection, and it will continue as we proceed through this book, because there's one judgment after another after another. And when we get to the trumpets, it's like, what happened to nature? The bowls are what happened to everything is being destroyed. The creation is like crashing. You name it, there's something going wrong with the sun, the atmosphere, the soil, the meteorological system, asteroids, volcanic everything's going chaotic. It's like God removed walls of protection. That's exactly what's going on. So, this word, like we talked about last week, means wing, okay? Which is a fascinating word. We talked about how there's other words for corner that he didn't elect to use that are more corner-esque. Well, this has the word, the meaning wing, okay, is the primary meaning. So he chose this to refer to tallits. The corner of a tallit is not like a cornerstone, it's a wing, okay? And we talked about that last week. And there's a couple verses. I'm convinced that we get the opportunity to choose whether we come underneath the wing of his protection or the authority that comes from the wing that brings down walls. There's a verse that I read last time that to me is just profound when you understand the meaning. And I'll read it again, if I can find it. Of course, it's not jumping out of me here. Yeah. O Jerusalem, This is Yeshua talking to you. It's one of the, like I said, talked about this last week. It's one of the two times he cries. who kills the prophets and stones those who have been sent to her. So how many people has God sent to you and you've just kind of, not going there? How often I wanted to gather your children together, the way a hen gathers her wings, the way the hen gathers her chicks under her kanaf, her wings. And you were unwilling. Behold, your house is being left to you desolate. For I say to you, from now on, you will not see me until you say, blessed is the one who comes in the name of Yahweh. To me, this is it's an intimate passage, isn't it? He wanted to bring us under his wing, like a groom brings the kanaf and wraps the wing around his tallit and wraps it around his bride on the day they get married. We talked about that last week. To me, it's like, I wanted to be intimate with you. I wanted to have a personal relationship with you. I wanted to know you. But what does it say? It says, you wouldn't have it. You were unwilling. Oh my gosh. Someday there will be people that look back and they will be weeping and gnashing their teeth, which is a metaphor in Hebrew that means angry. Maybe it'll be against themselves for being so ignorant of truth. It's staring at us in the face, but we're too busy to notice. God's just going, okay, I'm going to take a wall down. But that's not God's first choice. That's God's last choice. His first choice is, okay, I'm going to bless you. See if you'll see me in the blessing. That's what he did with Israel. You think they were like picture perfect during the period of the judges? No. What are the judges? What's the theme of the judges? These Israelites are putting up Ashtaroth poles. Okay, that's an ancient pagan Babylonian female goddess. And what's going on? God's blessing them. He goes, well, hopefully they'll see me in the harvest that I'm sending them their way. And then that doesn't work. So finally he resorts to sending them Saul. And we won't get into that. Are we doing the same thing? Are we getting blessed in spite of what we should be getting? Unfortunately, everything comes to an end. And our lives come to an end, and this earth age comes to an end. And at the end, whichever type of end it is, we're going to be held accountable for what we believed and what we did. Johnny.
We're getting blessed constantly as we try. I mean, that whole, oh, he knows my heart thing. It's a cop-out to me. If I'm not really trying or obeying the commandments or obeying everything that we know to obey, if we say we are and we're not, he knows my heart. I want to, but I can't, So, but there's still blessing in that too. So we can't knock that either. We only have to look at where we are ourselves instead of knocking someone else, because there's mercy everywhere.
We won't be judged for how we've judged the world.
Right.
We'll be judged for how we've judged ourselves.
Yes.
This concept of walls, blessings and curses, and wings of protection being on the blessing side and the cursing side is everywhere in the Bible. In Psalms 61:4, it says, this is David speaking, let me dwell in your tent forever. Let me take refuge in the shelter of your wings, of your kanaf, of your tallit wrapped around me. Grooms, what's one of their primary jobs for their bride? Protect her, right? Care for her, love her. Psalm 63:7, for you have been my help, and in the shadow, in tribulation, in the shadow of your wings, I sing for joy. So how many of us, when we see God's protection, thank him? Or do we just take it for granted? Or worse, wow, I'm pretty good. No. God allows you to be pretty good because he wants to see who you're going to give glory to. And then if you figure it out really quickly, then God gives you more authority. But if you keep going, wow, I'm pretty smart, I'm good, and you don't realize that all of what you have that's good is from him, God goes, okay, we need to learn a lesson again. Open up the wall a little bit. So verse 3, I'll start from verse 1. After this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth so that no wind would blow on the earth and on the sea and on any tree. And that's the trouble when we get to the next chapter, the trumpets. All of the trouble falls on those 3 things. And I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living God. And he called out with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to him to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their forehead. So these 4 angels are holding back this protection, this healing from being perpetually on the earth. They're tearing these walls down, and then this angel appears and says, stop. There's a group that I don't want to be influenced by this judgment that you're bringing upon the earth. We need to mark them for what kind of weird stuff is going on here? He's marking out a group of people. It says they have a signet ring, okay, from God. This guy that is appearing, I believe it's a theophany, which is a fancy word for something that represents, in this case, the Messiah. This angel that's rising from the rising of the sun, the east, right? The sun rises in the east. Who rises in the east? Multiple verses that talk about God rising from the east unto the west. It's in Matthew 24. There's other places where God is seen at the end, at the second coming. He's rising from the east. That's why all everybody, in front of the eastern gate of the temple in Jerusalem, it's for, I don't know, a long way, there's graveyards. It's just a cemetery. If you're standing at the eastern gate, it's a cemetery for as far as the eye can see. Now, why would you do that? They want to be first to rise when God comes back. Okay. I think God, God's coming back. He goes, oh, shoot, I wasn't planning on him being first. It's like they have control by positioning themselves where they're going to be buried. I don't think so. But anyway, it's just the lack of insight or something. I don't know. Emphasizing how many of us have emphasized the unimportant in our life? And to the loss of the important in our life. Anyway, so this signet ring is a big deal. We find it everywhere in the Old Testament, and we can learn some things. This angel has the signet ring of God in his hand, and he's about to mark some people with it. Usually in the Old Testament, you'll see this mark that is put on by the signet ring is a mark of authority. There's a transference of power from one to another. We see this in the story of Joseph in Genesis 41, 40 through 42. Let me read that. Let's see here. Should have had it turned here. Okay, the setting is Joseph has just wowed Pharaoh by coming up with all these very insightful recommendations he interpreted this dream, right, there's going to be 7 years of blessing and then 7 years of cursing. And so Pharaoh realizes this guy knows God. I want him second in command. And that's exactly what happens in recorded history, as well as archaeology. The latest findings are discovering that somebody that was not Egyptian was honored during this Pharaoh's reign. Anyway, so here's what the Pharaoh says. God has informed you of all this. There is no one as discerning and wise as you are. How many would like that said over you? No hands went up. You know, when I was a boy, this isn't this is for free. When I was a boy, I read this story about Solomon, and I go, I want to be like Solomon because God offered him something. What did he offer him? Wisdom. And I said, boy, for some reason, when I was 8 or something, that appealed to me, to be wise. So when something appeals to you that's holy and good, what you should not do is, well, no, that'll never happen. You should go, God, make it so. That's what I'd like. Anyway, you, speaking to Joseph, shall be in charge of my house, and all my people shall be obedient to you. Only regarding the throne will I be greater than you. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I see I have placed you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand and clothed him in garments of fine linen and put gold necklaces around his neck. And it goes on and gets to ride on, This signet ring was a power transference. So this angel, which I believe is Yeshua, has the signet ring of God, the power of God in his hand. And with it, he is going to impress upon, where does this mark go? On their foreheads, on the foreheads of these men, right? They're men. We'll get to the 144,000 in a minute. It's twice now. There's a transfer. I think there's a transfer of authority, but also, maybe even more importantly, identity. And we'll find out that identity in a bit. I noticed this when I was sitting in the back. I go, why didn't I have that in my notes? There's a sign that we can give God that we're part of the team. Like when you're part of the team, what do? You show up for practice, right? There's signs that you do to say you're part of something, right? God has given us signs in the text. If you're mine, give me this sign. And then also God goes, since you are mine, I'm putting a sign on you. An oat is the Hebrew word, a signet ring mark. Mark, oat, sign, they're all coming from the same biblical concept, okay? It's a mark that is put on somebody as a transference of identity and authority. So Joseph got this transference, but this sign, like for example, we can give God a sign. How many of us would like to give God a sign? Not that we hate him, but that we love him. 3 of us. Okay, meet me afterwards, you. One of them is like wild crazy that the Christian church completely ignores, and it's found multiple times. Honor the Shabbat is a sign from the Gentiles to God that they believe in him. That's a sign. It's an oath. It's a mark. So when you behave this way on Saturday, it's a mark. It's a sign going, I've got a flag. Hey, God, look, I'm yours.
It's the only one that says remember.
Yeah. We're running out of time. Otherwise, I'd read that passage. Remember the Egyptians? In Egypt, the Hebrews, they had a sign to God, right? On Passover, what was the sign? The blood on the doorpost. It was a sign to God going, we love you. We want to fall underneath your protection. And so when the death angel came over, nobody died in those households. And there's many signs, one of which was honor covenants or be holy. It's a sign. So how do you be holy? Follow God's ways, principles, and laws, right? It's a sign to God saying, you're in. It's kind of like why James says, I will show you my faith by signs. And what are those signs? By what I do. Okay? I'm not saying you have to work your way into heaven. I'm saying you believe, you trust, rely, depend on him. And then as proof down the road in your life of that covenant manifesting in your life, you start changing some behavior. So we can give God's like smoke signals, right? God does the same thing back to us. He's sending us smoke signals, some of which are like in 2 Corinthians 1:22. It says, who also sealed or marked or oath is the Hebrew word, marked us, sealed us, and gave us the Spirit in our hearts as a pledge. What's the pledge here? The context is you're going to be immortal. I'm going to come back. I'm going to bring you to me instead of perishing. And the pledge is that I'm going to seal you with a mark that you're mine. Yeah, but I had a bad day yesterday. Stop it already. Do you believe me or not? This isn't about your behavior. This is about your belief. Abraham believed in God, and it was accounted unto him as righteousness, right? Not holiness, but righteousness. And then Ephesians 1:13, in him you also, after listening to the message of truth, the gospel, the good news of your salvation, having also believed, you were sealed, you were marked in him with the Holy Spirit of the promise. Okay, so God marks his people once they become believers. Okay, he marks you out. So if you believe in him, you're marked. Whether you like it or not, you're marked. Ephesians, this is not Ephesians 1:13, but it's a verse. I have the wrong reference. And you also were included in the Messiah when you heard the message of truth, the gospel of your salvation. When you believed, you were marked in him. You were sealed in him with a seal, the promised Holy Spirit, who is a deposit guaranteeing our inheritance until the redemption of those who are God's possession, to the praise of his glory. So, what's going on here? We've got a bunch of people that are getting sealed, marked. Can you have multiple marks? Yeah. Can you have multiple authorities? Can you have multiple responsibilities? How many of you are fathers and mothers, but you also have a job?
Yeah.
There's multiple authorities, multiple responsibilities, right? These guys, the assumption is that they're already believers. But God is going, no, these guys are singled out. I'm putting a separate wall around them for a certain task. How many have been called to do a task? How many did it or are doing it? Well, guess what? When you enter into that endeavor, God goes, I know this is going to be trouble for you to march through this. It's going to be a challenge. Everything in your being might be called into question, but I'm going to build another wall around you. For this task requires more strength, more energy, more faith, up. These guys are being marked out for a unique task. Nobody ever in the history of mankind has been marked out for this task. 144,000, it's 3 now, are marked out in this way. How many of you would like to be marked out for a specific task? Don't raise your hand because it means trouble. Think about it.
Don't say amen.
We are almost out of time. And my ending conclusion is 2.5 pages away. And I'll be gone for 2 weeks. So you're going to have to remember what we talked about so I can conclude with this awesome conclusion. Let's see. 144,000. Let's talk about this group. That was 4, by the way. These guys are clearly end-time witnesses for Christ. No. They're mentioned 4 different places, 3 or 4, I think 4. They're mentioned in this chapter, chapter 7. They're mentioned in chapter 15 in Revelation, chapter 16 in Revelation, and Ezekiel chapter 9, I believe. Ezekiel, if you want to get some additional insight into what we're studying in Revelation, read the first 12, 13 chapters of Ezekiel. It's like a chronology of what we've studied so far. These events keep occurring, but they keep occurring in biblical prophecy, right? In the same order, okay? So this 144,000, there's a group in chapter 9 in Ezekiel that are specially marked out because they were holy unto God, where everybody else is falling apart. They aren't marked. These guys are marked. Let me tell you, there's no task described for them to do. The last thing that they're ever told to do is go be the end time witnesses for the Messiah. That comes from the rapture theorists who say, all the believers have been raptured. These guys finally come along, realize the light. They get the same mark of salvation that we get, and they're the only ones left, so they witness for all the remainder suckers that got left behind. No. Have we seen a description of a rapture yet? No. It's coming very clearly. You would think in the last book of the Bible that talks about end time events, there would be a clear description of God coming back for his people. There is. The reason why it's not recognized as it's in the wrong spot. It's at the end of all the trouble, not at the beginning. We'll get there. It's in chapter 14 if you want to read ahead. So we have 144,000, 12,000 come from each tribe. Now it's interesting because these groups are not the 12 tribes that you might think. They're a little bit different. Joseph and Manasseh are in. Well, Manasseh is Joseph's son. So Manasseh and Ephraim are Joseph's sons, right? They get an inheritance into the promised land, right? Joseph doesn't, except via his two sons, right? So why is Joseph singled out here in this list of 144,000? And where is Ephraim? I'm sorry. Where is Ephraim? Manasseh is included, but not Ephraim. And Dan is left out, as well as Ephraim. Both of these guys are not in this list. And I'm going, this has always bothered me when I was reading this text. Why? And so anyway, my conclusion is I've found some greasy verses associated with these two tribal heads. In Isaiah 7:8, it says, Ephraim will be shattered, so it is no longer a people. Ephraim was hugely important. Sometimes the northern 10 tribes, after they split up in 920 BC from Solomon's reign, they split up into two countries, the northern 10 and the southern 2, Judah, and then it became known as Israel, which was the northern 10. So sometimes the biblical text will call the northern 10 tribes Ephraim. They were hugely important. They got the biggest chunk of the best land. Where are they today? And then Dan. Why does Dan not appear? It says in Genesis 48:17, in the blessings of all the children, Dan shall be a serpent. Not probably the best thing you want as your epitaph, right? Shall be a serpent in the way, a horned viper in the path that bites the horse's heel, so that its rider falls backwards. And Amos 8:14. As for those who serve by the guilt of Samaria and say, as your God lives, Dan, they will fall and not rise again. These guys, what did Dan bring into Israel? Idolatry. They were, they ushered in the idolatry of the pagan world to the north. It's interesting. Maybe I can get to a little bit of this. Dan, some of you know I wrote a book out there. What's the name of it? It's about the constellations. And the constellation for Dan, this is not a paganism constellation. This is, the book establishes the concept that Satan doesn't create anything, it just perverts what God has created. So these constellations are God's messages to mankind from the beginning. They've been up swirling overhead from the beginning, telling the same story. There's a story written in the sky. So everybody has an account. It says that in Psalms 19, it says the heavens reveal the glory of God. And Paul wrote in Romans 1 how the creation declares his existence, so nobody has excuse. So that's one of the reasons why I think I find God easier out in the woods. I don't know. It reveals his creative mind. So, where did we leave off here? So the constellation of Dan is very interesting. These things go back to the beginning. After the flood, 5,000 years ago. If you look at the tribal pictures in the sky, they haven't changed. Over the entire globe, they all realize that Virgo was a woman, a virgin up in the sky that gave birth to a man-child. Whether you're in Africa or Egypt or in South America, 5,000 years ago, whatever tribe you lived in, it was the same constellations. Oh, the names were different because they spoke different languages. But the concept was the same. It was always a virgin is the first constellation, okay? And if you follow the order, starting with Virgo, all the way around to Leo, which is the 12th, it tells the Bible story of God coming because we blew it, and he fights off this dragon and saves the day, right? That's a very short version of this story. It's detailed, and it comes right out of the Bible. Or did the Bible come out of? No, neither one came out of either one. They all came out of the mind of God. That's why all of these things that God sets up, whether it's constellations, feasts, or whatever, they all have commonality because they're coming from the same source, right? So Dan is interesting. He's the only one that changed over time. His constellation changed from the most majestic symbol that God created, I think, which is the eagle. I saw a bald eagle a couple of weeks ago. It was about that tall, standing on top of a deer that had been hit by a car. Let me tell you, this thing was fully mature. That thing was regal. Dan had that symbol, this regal eagle. Eagle in the Bible is usually associated with insight, wisdom, sometimes judgment. That's what the word Dan means, judgment. But it changed over time. It changed from this regal identifier to an evil, a scorpion identifier. I'm going to skip over some stuff. I'm going to try to do this. So, in regards to these constellations, to give you a little bit of insight into how God wrote about himself in the sky. 5,000 years ago, you know, everybody, the North Star is Polaris. You know, it's up over there at night. You can see it. Because of the movement of the celestial beings, they're slowly shifting through time. So back 5,000 years ago, what was the North Star? It was Draco, the constellation Draco. Does anybody know what Draco is? It's a dragon. So when we fell, God goes, okay, Satan's going to be the ruler of the earth. And what is the North Pole, the North Star? What does it do for mankind? It's from which we get, they call it a pole star, right? What verbiage do we use today? Plumb line. If you're a builder, you know what a plumb line is. You get your bearing, right? 5,000 years ago, as imagery of what Adam and Eve and mankind did after the fall, they got their bearing from a monster who was ruling the earth and still rules today, but not for very long, thank God. But, you know, is this accidental? I don't know. You tell me. Over the course of time, the plumb line, the North Star, has migrated through, and today it's in Ursa Minor, which has Polaris in it, right at the tail of her. It's called the Little Dipper, right? Well, it's the small bear. Ursa is bear, okay? So now it's in Ursa Minor. That's where we get what's in ancient times, and the Hebrews, they didn't call it the little bear. What did they call it? Let me get this right. It's the sheepfold or the, where is it? Yeah, the little flock. That's what it used to be called in ancient times. Ursa Minor was called the little flock or the sheepfold. Wonder what that is. Now, don't think Satan, think God. Now, what's happening up in the stars is Draco, the dragon, is pointed at this little flock, the remnant of God, and it wants to devour that little flock. Today, the plumb line comes from the little flock. The message to us and the question is yet to come. In not too many years, this movement of the stars will shift to, and I forget the name of the constellation off the top of my head, Cepheus, which is a mighty king sitting on a throne. That's where the pole star will be, is a mighty king sitting on a throne. Now, what's going to happen in the future? Capital A, mighty king will take back his creation. When we get to 22 in Revelation, we're going to see this mighty king sitting on a throne with his bride next to him, ruling and reigning over the creation. It's written in the stars. Someday in the future, we will get our plumb line, our bearing from the king. Today, the question today is, we're that little flock that Satan's trying to kill. Are you providing the right plumb line? Can people look at your life, your thought life, your actions, and go, whoa, that plumb line, it's crooked. It's not Yeshurun. The plumb line is perfectly perpendicular with the surface of the earth at that point, because it's round, but at that point, it's flat. It's perfectly perpendicular. Is that your walk? If I were to learn, or anybody would learn or climb into your mind, would they go, ah? Or would they go, whoa, man, you got that thing under control. Every time an idea slips in, man, you snuff that puppy right out. Or do you meditate on all this rot? And then if you meditate on anything, what happens? Yeah. So what are you becoming? What is your life becoming? God's calling you to be a plumb line. Make it so. With that, I'll end. We'll pick this back up in a couple of weeks. I'll be gone. Let's see. We don't have any bread. Let's pray. Father, we come before you. We thank you for this day. We thank you for that you are our plumb line, and that, we all have some crookedness in us. But Father, I pray that you would just kind of straighten it out, and just give us the desire to all those kinks that are in our life. Father, give us the desire and the strength to just straighten those things, get those things out, get the planer out, and plane off those rough spots in our heart and our wills and our mind. Get us to think according to your plumb line. And Father, I pray that as we do, that you repair those walls of protection around your people, your bride. And Father, let us thank you for that protection. Let us be aware of what you are doing, will do, and have done in our lives to have us be alive this day, and to appreciate every day and all the protection and all the blessing that you've given us. Father, we love you and adore you. In your name, amen. You'll stand for the Aaronic blessing. I'm losing my voice. The Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his face upon you and give you peace. So may it be. Amen. Shabbat shalom. And happy day. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.